just a short video. One of the things we run into almost in every training we've ever done is the difference between teaching and training. And so sometimes I say this at the beginning, or I wait till they're maybe a rep or two into one of the tools before I point this out. But one of the things that we run into is people want to teach what they've heard, or they want to evaluate and critique it. And so what I mean by teaching is they'll hear like the why, and they'll go, well, let me tell you what I really think this is I first heard this when I was a kid. That's teaching. Or they'll go, I really don't agree with what he did. That's critiquing. That's not training. So you have to really go out of your way sometimes after they've maybe done a rep or two to go, I've heard some of you do this as you're critiquing and teaching. And most likely this happens with people who maybe have a seminary background or a pastor or something like that. So make a point of this is what we tell people. Repeat back to your buddy as if they were not in the room. And so use your own words, but that's training, is literally doing exactly what you saw there with your own words, what you just heard. Don't critique and don't teach the tool. If that makes sense. So you're going to have to say that at some point, actually sometimes several times every week if you're doing a drip training. One other thing I want to show you, this is free, don't include this in the training, but sometimes it's good to show the contrast between the product you get, or the outcome you get when you teach versus training. And so this is something, it's not original with me, but with teaching, it tends to be I talk. In training, I do, you follow. In teaching, it's relatively passive. In training, it's always active. Teaching, you tend to get to addition. In training, the goal is multiplication. Teaching generally is low accountability. In training, it's high accountability because you're going to have to turn around and do it. In teaching, it's knowledge based. Training, it's generally skill based, and it's long term. And again, some of this um, is a little subjective. Teaching is focused on learners. Training is on disciples or apprentices. And then, of course, in training, the secret and the sauce is the model, assist, watch, launch. If you don't have this, or at some place in your church in terms of your discipleship process, you're going to have very long term, you're not going to have good results. If all of your discipleship is in this area, and if there's not a good mix of this, you're going to get long term bad outcomes. The other thing I want to show you, this is not original to me, but this is a little statement from Nathan Shank, is what a disciple does in the first 90 days, 3 months of his or her faith journey will most likely be reproduced throughout their walk. If the disciple is asked to passively observe the work of the church, most likely passivity will set in as the DNA of their walk. However, if the disciple is expected and trained to aggressively pursue friends and loved ones, multiplication usually sets in motion. And lastly, you've all seen this before, but it's worth mentioning. This is the triangle of internalization. When you lecture, they tend to remember 5%. If they're reading it, they tend to retain 10%. If there's some type of audio visual component to the teaching or training, it jumps to 20. If there's a demonstration, whether they do it or you do it, it goes to 30. Then when there's a discussion, it jumps to 50. But this is the sweet spot of retention and internalization, when they actually practice it and they're forced to teach it to each other. This is exactly where we do most of our drip or bucket training, is in this last area of retention, is in practice and teaching others. Hope that helped in terms of training versus teaching.